Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to freestyle about political science here for just a couple of minutes. Might seem like a dry subject. I know it seemed dry to me growing up, and when I was in school, I hated politics. The whole idea was unsavory to me, but there are some interesting ideas when you start to, examine it with a mature analytical perspective. And granted, I am no, certified political scientist, but I do understand some of the ideas, and I want to talk about a couple of important ones here in this video for a few minutes. You've heard of democracy, I'm 100% sure. You've heard of representation, representatives, elected officials, elections. All of these things should ring a bell, but one thing you don't hear about very often is the contradiction between representation and democracy itself. What do I mean by contradiction? I mean that if you think about it, representation is just another word for leadership. You can dispute that, but it's true. Representation and leadership are two words for the same thing, where you have an elected person who is representing your interests, presumably, on paper anyway, and they are, making decisions on your behalf, driving in a direction, whereas democracy is the people voting, obviously, for some direction versus being, guided or managed by an authoritarian. It's a fundamental difference of design, right? So it's this difference that we don't often discuss. You don't hear about it, but it's a powerful difference, and it's an exploitable opportunity, unfortunately. So I want to highlight this difference in this video and then move on to maybe a second subject. So consider, in principle, a democratic government, a democratic society where the majority of important decisions are left to the voters in principle, again, not necessarily in practice, but they have, a ballot to choose from, and they make their decisions and their preferences known by way of voting. Okay, well, how does this mesh with representation? How does this mesh with elected representatives making similar decisions on behalf of the people? Okay, so you have a contradiction here. You've got an advertised design where people are voting on one hand for what they want versus elected representatives making decisions on their behalf. So where's the trade-off? Where's the line? And how do these things even fit together? Turns out they don't fit together. It should seem strange, because it is strange. These are two different systems trying to coexist. You have basically authoritarianism, that's some type of monarchy or oligarchy, or an absolute rule by powerful people, versus people having the power themselves and having a say in every matter that concerns them. So we find that our ballots in this country, I'm going to be honest and candid here, are largely superfluous. Here's the answer. Our ballots, our voting processes, including when we think we're electing representatives, are mainly for the purpose of distracting the voter into thinking that they did something important. It is to distract you by way of giving you something to chew on for one day out of the year or a couple of days out of the year, so that you can go back to work and say, hey, I did my part. I did my best. And if it's still not better, shoot, well, we have a democracy, and just not enough people voted for the good stuff or whatever. In any case, you're placated, you're distracted, and you put down your protests because you put that energy into driving down to the voting booth, right? This is the purpose of our voting system. It's not to make important decisions, and in fact, when was the last time you saw something very important on the ballot? Let's be honest. When was the last time you saw a call for a new economic system, or a call for a basic fundamental revision of our form of government? When was the last time you saw anything largely pivotal and highly controversial that has the potential to disrupt our existing power structure? You will not see these things, and there's a reason for it. All of these decisions are being made behind the scenes without voter consent, and for the purpose of preserving and protecting the existing status quo, the existing power structure. So what we really have in this country, and I don't want this to be a scathing criticism necessarily of our way of government, although I can't really avoid it, is we have authoritarians making unilateral decisions by themselves with a fake voting system designed to make you think you have input when you actually do not. Nothing you can vote on will change the power structure. Nothing you can vote on will change our economic system. I'm sure of this because if it could, it would be made illegal. You would not see it one way or the other on the ballot. So anyway, something to think about, that leadership and democracy are basically incompatible. They're two wildly different forms of government. So it should seem strange. It should seem very unlikely and awkward that we have representation or leadership in combination with democracy. And you should question that. You should question why these two things claim to be able to coexist, because they don't coexist. Best case scenario, last thing I'll say about democracy. Best case scenario is democracy can be useful, very useful in fact, for preventing conflict, for preventing war and disaster as a last resort. When people are so compelled to stick to their camps, to stick to their beliefs and their political leanings, their preferences, that they are on the verge of war or abandonment of all agreement, democracy can at that point, and only at that point, step in to resolve such a dispute. But to say that it's the Swiss Army knife of every political problem, you can just solve it with democracy, it's logically nonsense. It makes no sense. You cannot have representation and democracy. It's one or the other. So you already know which one it is if you think about it. Anyhow, something to think about. I think that a lot of people they're getting bamboozled, and God bless our founding fathers in this part of the world, the American founding fathers, the authors of our documents, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. They had some really good ideas. They had just enough good ideas to make it robust and durable, but it kind of, it was under attack, if you ask me, right from the get-go. From day one, it was under attack by corrupt, selfish interests, people who had learned a thing or two about rodeos, political rodeos, from European politics, and they wanted to, keep control of the people and the process by any means necessary. So you started seeing the addition of amendments to the Constitution. For example, the later amendments are pretty ambiguous, and you don't hear too much about them, but they aim to do things like protect slavery, slave trade, and certain types of corruption. The founding fathers were not of one mind. I've said this before in my videos. They had a wildly differing view on what was proper and what direction to go, and how could they know? Honestly, how could they all have a crystal ball and know exactly what was around the bend hundreds of years later? So we still see a few of those ideas in circulation. We see freedom of speech, we see freedom of religion. Freedom in general is a tremendous idea. The connection between freedom and godliness that was their biggest opportunity, that they actually hit the nail on the head, if you ask me. Enabling the people to be free, to pursue happiness, to have immunity from false prosecution, to have recourse, to have a vote of confidence by the legal system, to have an assumption of innocence, a presumption of innocence. These were all some of the biggest strides forward, but unfortunately, they never completed the circle, if you ask me. They never finished what they started, and it was so weak and brittle that it just fell apart. It fell apart from corrupt interests, from people just not wanting to empower the people, to see people be healthy and happy. They want mainly to empower themselves. If we're being honest. People who care mainly only about their families, their own particular families, and they have no compunction about slavery. They have no compunction about ghettos across the tracks. They have no compunction about the other party's failure, the other party's suffering and misfortune. These people eroded the foundations that were laid by our good intentions as a country, by American values, the actual ones that are helping people, everyone, including them. They were sacrificed, they were diluted and destroyed over time and from day one, if we're being honest. Something to think about. So in final conclusion, just before 10 minutes, I don't believe that our system is salvageable. I believe that it has more things wrong with it than are good. But it has some very good gems, some very powerful ideas that must be included in any working system, such as freedom, such as the liberty to pursue happiness, to defend yourself against unlawful prosecution, against corrupt people and leaders, and to actually have a say in what happens. There is an answer to all these questions. There's an answer to every single question, and it is not just having a specific law book, okay? That's a bigger conversation. It's connected to this subject, but unilateral laws are unfair to everybody. They're equal, but they're equally unfair, and that is not the answer. There is an answer, and I can't wait to talk more about it. So if you like this video, reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com, or if you dislike this video, if you have complaints, concerns, please also reach out. Thank you. Have a great day.